Welcome back to our study of watching Jesus serve. We've gone through several examples of watching Jesus, and our only point of this study is to watch and learn and reflect for ourselves what we can learn from it. And as we've watched Jesus serve, we've seen him do three things. He's touched those who many people saw as untouchable. He's corrected backwards and faulty ways of thinking. And maybe most importantly for us, he's leading us by example, how to live our own lives. Last week we discussed the positive reactions of Jesus serving, people being encouraged by what he's doing and trying to figure out who he is and follow suit, living the life that he wants them to live. And this week we're going to take it a little bit of a different direction and unfortunately talk about the negative reactions to Jesus serving. He went on from there, entered their synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. And they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" So they might accuse him. This group here was called the Pharisees, and if you've read the Gospels enough, then you're very familiar with them. But the Pharisees were unfortunately kind of Jesus' arch nemesis throughout his ministry. They were always giving him trouble. They were always looking for a debate. And there are a few occasions where they really just blatantly try to trip him up. One time they asked him about divorce, which has always been a touchy subject for every generation and will continue to be. Then they ask him things about like taxes, which, I mean, if you're looking to trip somebody up, those issues will definitely give you foot and mouth syndrome really quickly. And even on the way to the synagogue, the Pharisees had a problem and controversy with Jesus. And this problem was, again, over the topic of the Sabbath. What is okay to do on the day we're supposed to rest? And we know that the Jews taught, and the law of Moses taught, that the Sabbath was supposed to be a day of rest, and especially in the Ten Commandments. It was one of those staunch, there's no budging on this commandment. You were supposed to honor, remember the Sabbath, and to keep it holy. Don't do any work. You're not supposed to go fishing that day. Nothing that you could do the days previous that you could prepare for. And certainly in the law, there were very specific directions about how to observe the Sabbath. But that was not enough for some Jewish people. And when Jesus came on the scene, there were plenty more rules that Jews made up on top of the regular law of Moses commandments about the Sabbath. Some rabbis taught that you could not thread a needle on the Sabbath because the implication was you're looking to work on the Sabbath. Why would you thread a needle if you're not going to sew something? And others thought, well, you can't light a flame on the Sabbath because are you going to cook something? Like what are you doing with that flame? And it really got ridiculous. And they went way outside what Moses dictated and what God dictated to them about how to observe the Sabbath. So they're trying to catch Jesus in his own words here. Is it lawful to heal this person on the Sabbath? He said to them, "Which one of you has a sheep, if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not take hold of it and lift it out? Of how much more value is a man than a sheep? So it's lawful to do good in the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And the man stretched it out, and it was restored, healthy like the other. What Jesus does here, and really his interactions with the Pharisees in general, is genius. Because he brings up a common thing that everybody did in the Sabbath. And apparently this was a common thing that happened back in this time. But as you're bringing your animal outside for the morning, a lot of times they would stay in the house with people back in that time. As you're bringing them in and out of the house, maybe one of them gets caught in a ditch or in a hole, gets their leg stuck in something. And it was no thought at all for the ancient person on the Sabbath to get their sheep up out of that situation. And just think about the absurdity of what Jesus is saying here. You're telling me that if your animal gets caught in a ditch and it's early Saturday morning, you're not supposed to do any work, you're really telling me you're going to let that thing sit there for 24 hours. I got to wait till Sunday. I can't get him out of there because Sabbath says don't work. And Jesus points out, guys, that's not work. You don't make a business out of pulling animals from ditches. It's your property. You need them. They need you. Pull them out of the ditch. It's not a problem. Everybody did that. And then he exposes the Pharisees' hypocrisy. He says, if it's okay for you to pull your animal out of the ditch on the Sabbath, is it not also okay to heal a human being on the Sabbath? And he says, you really care more about a sheep than you do another living, breathing human being? Needless to say, not a good look for the Pharisees. They do not look like good guys here. And the sheep illustration really stands out here because Jesus used this several times, as in Matthew chapter 9. Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and affliction. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. So Jesus has compassion on this man with this condition, as opposed to the Pharisees who are using this man for political purposes. And you get the sense that Jesus is disgusted. You really only care about this man to prove a political or theological point. And his point is, if I did heal this man and fixed him permanently, you're saying that you would be offended. So you really care more about your very narrow-minded view of God and what he wants you to do than what I could do for this man right now, his well-being. But knowing their hearts, Jesus heals the man anyway. And he literally says, stretch out your arm, which, assuming if his arm was drawn up to him, he couldn't stretch it out. But Jesus simply says, stretch it out, and he was able to do it. Kind of like he told the man, get up and walk. He wasn't able to use his legs, but when Jesus told him, he just got up and started using his legs all of a sudden. And this is where the Pharisees really show where their hearts are at. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, how to destroy him. We already saw in verses 9 and 10 of this chapter that the Pharisees knew what they were doing, and they had an ulterior motive in asking Jesus this question. They weren't being sincere. They were trying to catch Jesus in his words, trying to find something that they could use to bring against him in a later situation. Basically, they were hardening their hearts like Pharaoh did. It wouldn't matter what Moses did. It wouldn't matter what Moses would say, or the compassion, or trying to reason with Pharaoh. Pharaoh was just stubborn. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew he wasn't going to budge, and it took an extreme circumstance for him to finally let the Israelites go. The same with the Pharisees, and Jesus probably understood that. It won't matter if I'm sincere. It won't matter if I raise 100 people from the dead. It won't matter if I raise from the dead. You won't believe me. And so later on in the Bible, we read that the Pharisees got so upset with Jesus that they even started plotting with their enemies and people who didn't align with them theologically to try and kill him, as in John chapter 11. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we going to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all. Nor do you understand that it's better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish." He did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. So the Pharisees are so hard of heart, and their ears have become so calloused that it didn't matter what Jesus was going to do. They were going to find a way to silence him. And ultimately, as we read at the end of the Gospels, their way of silencing Jesus was to talk to the Romans. They brought him before the council, as the law of Moses required them to do, and tried to bring different witnesses against him. Well, some say he's this, some say he did that, X, Y, and Z, but no one get their story straight. And nothing really ever contradicted the law of Moses. So what they did instead was they brought him to Pilate, and they said, ultimately, you're letting this guy who says there's another king except for Caesar, you're letting him walk away. And Pilate was forced to make a move or resign or be condemned himself. So ultimately, these religious leaders were responsible for killing the Messiah that they were waiting for. And as a religious person, I think I have the space to say this. Some of the worst people on our planet and some of the worst people in history have been religious people. People have done all kinds of awful things in the name of religion. We've fought wars in the name of God, supposedly. We've committed all kinds of awful crimes in the name of our God or the name of Christianity. And the Jews, these Pharisees and religious leaders, killed the Son of God, God in the flesh, in the name of their religion. And to be fair, the Pharisees were not showing true religion. They were not being sincere. They were not being tender-hearted. They were being stubborn. They were practicing what we might call false religion. False religion usually starts from a good place, and it ends up taking us places that we really don't want to be in the end. First of all, false religion can create the wrong priorities inside of us. False religion made the Pharisees more concerned about their interpretation of the law than the law itself. They became more worried with their club, their exclusive understanding of the law of Moses, than even this man's well-being. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that a lot of churches are that exact same way. Imagine if Jesus had gone from town to town and he taught his lessons, but he never healed anyone. He never took the time to have conversations with people. He never helped fix people's problems. His message would be void. It wouldn't be validated. The compassion and mercy was the crux of his ministry, leading those who were lost back to the source, God. And a lot of churches do their ministries like that. I don't want anything to do with you unless you want to study the Bible. It's not always the point. Well, I can't help you unless you do something for me. That was not the point. We need to be concerned about people first. That's our theology, helping people, because ultimately our job is to bring them to Christ. What would Christ be doing? Reaching people who were lost. So if we're not careful, that false religion creep into our lives and we start prioritizing things above people. And people are supremely more important than things. Secondly, false religion can blind people. The irony for the Pharisees and the tragedy of this story is that they were looking for the Messiah their whole lives. Really, ever since Jerusalem was sacked by Babylon and they were taken off into captivity, Isaiah and the prophets started prophesying about there's going to be somebody better. There's going to be a better covenant. There's going to be a temple that's not going to fail. There's going to be this figure like David that's going to come and lead us into all truth. And these guys were desperately searching for him. Who is the Messiah? Where is he going to come from? What will he be like? What will he act like? How can I join him? And in Jesus, they had the Messiah right in front of them. But because they were so blind by their own views and interpretations, they couldn't even see him. And what's worse, their blindness led them to kill the very Messiah they were longing for. Now, we might not have the opportunity to kill the Messiah. I mean, Jesus has already died and he's resurrected and he lives forever. He reigns supreme now. But in the same way, how many times have you heard someone say something to you that's true, that you know is true, but it hurts your feelings? And they just come out and say it to you. It might not be the most couth way of saying it. Maybe they could have had a better way of saying it, but ultimately they're speaking truth to you and you don't like it. And sometimes if we're practicing false religion, we end up going and backbiting. We end up spreading rumors. We end up not taking those things for what it's worth, but instead for our own pride and on our own consciences, we start to manipulate and harm the person who's telling us the truth. The lesson we can learn from this is true religion is sincere and it's tender-hearted and it's willing to listen to correction. The Pharisees weren't that. The good news about this story is that false religion can be cured. If you've been listening to this and you feel like that might be you, then that's not the end of the rope. That's not the end of your story. You're not doomed to practice false religion for the rest of your life. There is hope. But that hope is found in listening to Jesus' message, watching him do what he does, repenting, following him, and leading others to him as well. Hey, you're still here. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed the video. Give us your feedback, comment, subscribe, and tell us what you'd like to see next.